Hey everyone, it's Danita Ogandaga with DanitaOgandaga.com. Wanted to come before you just to take a few moments to just say on behalf of my family, we just want to extend our condolences to the people that have lost their lives, the 9 families that have lost their loved ones during the wake of the shooting and the massacre that happened in Charleston, South Carolina. You know, when we talk about tragedy and we talk about grief and we talk about those types of situations that happen, there's so many types of emotions that can register with us. For someone that has done grief work for the last 16 years or so, it hits home in so many ways. At the very heart of all of this is really the issue of identity and understanding who we are and whose we are. In a situation like this where someone has decided to just go in at random and take 9 precious lives of people who were going into a church or in a church worshiping and bowing before the Father that they serve, that is the ultimate betrayal, the ultimate massacre. So we just extend our hands and our prayers to the families that have been touched throughout this tragedy. And as the people of South Carolina begin to heal, we just ask for the courage to be able to own the things that need to be owned so that the conversation and the dialogue can begin. You know, at the heart of all the issues that we are dealing with in America today and the world, it all is rooted in the issue of identity and who we are. You have so many people that for so long in South Carolina have identified themselves by a flag or by symbols, and those things have become a deeply rooted, innate part of who they are. So when situations like this happen, they can't cross over to understanding and being sensitive to the pain that these families and these people in this community may be dealing with, because they're so fixated on culture. They're so fixated on tradition. And that's really what a lot of people in the world are dealing with today, is just the issue of an identity crisis. In my new course, I talk about social media accounts, the 21 ways that we can be able to identify who we are, our authentic and online presence. Really, those things shouldn't be 2 different things. But for many of us, we find those things being 2 different things. We find ourselves being one way online. We find ourselves being another way in public. And really the great struggle with that is just understanding that we have an authentic self and we have a social self. And oftentimes that social self can all but too often take the course and take the lead. And we won't really understand who we are authentically because we're trying to put on. We're trying to assume the labels, and we're trying to be all things to all people. We're on the treadmill of performance. We're trying to be this and trying to be that. And because of it, we run into a bombardment. We run into a brick wall because we're trying to satisfy culture. We're trying to satisfy likes. We're trying to satisfy hearts on Instagram. We're trying to satisfy tweets on Twitter, retweets. But we need to understand at the heart of everything that we're dealing with, the crisis, the conflict, we have an authentic self. And it's time for a lot of us to get in touch with that authentic self. And in my new course, Social Media Accounts, I talk about the 21 ways that we can begin to tap into who we are. For those that have followed me for the last 16 years, from the poetry readings to the University of North Carolina, to Barnes & Nobles at our book clubs, to our online podcasts, to our present-day grief talk collaboratives that we have online, you'll find that the thread is the same. We're talking about the orphan spirit. We're talking about identity. We're using Tupac. We're using narrative therapy. We're using all types of things to talk about human behavior. But at the end of the day, it all comes to the point of this. If you're in the church, you understand it as the orphan spirit. And the fact that we replace and put all kinds of things in the pot when we should be following Jesus Christ. And because we don't follow Jesus Christ, when something happens to us, we look to those things and those people in those places to fill us what only God himself can. And if you're not associated with Jesus Christ, it's just a plain out identity crisis of just not knowing who you are. You've been a certain way for so long. You've identified yourself by culture, by tradition, by whatever the case may be for so long that when it comes time to be your authentic self, you challenge that against truth. You challenge that and wonder if it's going to be sincere enough for the masses. But I want to encourage you and let you know that you have permission to be yourself. For those that have followed me during Grief Talk, you know that there is an odd silence that's associated with how we grieve. So we're not going to talk about that. It's the elephant in the room. We know it. It's been there. The whole issue to that is also identity. Because once we lose a child, once we lose a father, once we lose a mother, who are we? Once we lose a husband, once we lose a wife, who are we? We have to get back to being who we are. We have to get back to being our authentic selves. We have to understand that social self has its place, but it is not meant to become the mirror for who we are in this life. It has its place, but we cannot let that get overshadowed by who we were meant to be, our authentic self. And that's what I talk about in social media accounts. So I want to extend to you an invitation. The pre-order is open. You can access the course from now until June 30th for $47. After that, the price will go up to $97. So whether you find yourself in a Caitlin situation, whether you find yourself in a Rachel, the young lady in Spokane, Washington, whether you find yourself in that situation, or whether you're a part of this situation that has happened in Charleston, where you're understanding that theft has occurred, a mass tragedy has occurred, people have lost their lives, and they can't wake up and face tomorrow like we can. People have a promise. People are wanting to heal, and you can be a part of that healing. But first we have to own the things that we belong to, that we've attached ourselves to for years and years and years. And as Brene Brown said, on yesterday, she's willing to be a part of the conversation for the tragedy in Charleston. But first, there's so much things that Charleston, South Carolina, and South Carolina as a whole, and really people in the world as a whole, have to own up to before a real conversation begins. Anybody can form an agenda. And that's one of the things that State Senator Clementa Pinckney was all about, forming an agenda, making things move, making things happen. But before a blueprint can be established, before an agenda can be established, that commitment to owning what we need to own, our mess, our traditions, our symbols, those things, our stuff that we hold on to, those things must first be owned and addressed for us to be able to follow in that blueprint and get the agenda going. Agenda is fluent. Agendas follow like water. It can be done, and I trust that it will be done. And for the sake of these families that have lost their loved ones in Charleston, I pray that it's done. Thank you for listening. God bless you, and I look forward to seeing you.